Welcome back. This is Inside Sport, and if you just tuned in, you're in luck. I have with me Ray Langa, who is the MD of Levergy, Mike Sharman, who's the co-founder of MatchKit, and John Villers, who is the MD of Nielsen Sports South Africa. And of course, this afternoon, we're looking mainly at the business of sport and how it's been affected by COVID-19. It looks like the general consensus is that the pot will shrink in this multi-billion rand sector. So how will we adapt to what we now call the new normal? Mike, you mentioned how there is the integral part of sport and the business of sport, which is the athlete. The athlete cannot find himself or herself, messing with their livelihood just because they want to ensure that the brand and the team or the industry continues to survive through this COVID-19. We did, of course, last year see a number of athletes and players from different kinds of teams choosing to, take salary cuts. Coaches did the same thing, but that, for them at least, I'm sure they'll believe is not sustainable. Their agents will believe is not sustainable. So how then, as an institution, do you, discuss with an athlete that, look, we're going to go through this for quite a while. The recovery, of COVID-19 for sport is going to take about 12 months. How do you have that conversation with an athlete who's used to making, $80 million a year?
I think that there are quite a few different trends there based on those questions. And I think the first is the explosion in content. The athletes are not just valuable for the size of an audience within the stadia. Today, because you can't have fans at the Soweto Derby, for example, it doesn't mean that your fans who are 100,000, 1 million strong on social media, they don't count. Of course they do. They're more valuable than ever before. So what I think is definitely the content growth and the increase in streaming content, both in the video aspect as well as podcasting and audio. It saw a huge explosion during lockdown, especially from a South African market perspective. And, that's the reason why we built MatchKit, so that we could help athletes essentially create an ecosystem link to all of their social channels. It has a built-in merchandise opportunity where they can sell bespoke branded merch via drop shipping principles. They also can raise funds for a charity of their choice or crowdfund for their own initiatives. And I think for once in their lives, athletes have finally been put on a level playing field, whether you are the $80 million per annum kind of athlete or you are the journeymen and women who are earning a pretty average, inverted commas, salary. It's made them realize that they are mortal and that their careers will come to an end at some stage, where most athletes have never had to experience or think about that. And now with these efforts, we're putting the athlete at the center of the ecosystem and making them realize that they can be in charge of their own revenue drivers, new revenue streams, unlocking new value. Doing motivational talks via Zoom. The digital content ecosystem is one of huge value for athletes to unlock revenue drivers.
Jean, Mike mentions, the importance of the role digital can play in our sport, but how important is broadcasters, and I speak particularly to a super sport, who of course do control much of the sports broadcasting industry on this continent. How important is their role in ensuring that sport does not suffer any more than it already has?
Yeah, the broadcast whole landscape is a very fascinating one at the moment, because it's we've seen COVID accelerate a lot of trends where we knew that streaming was coming. We knew that the OTT and the direct to consumer apps were on their way and being built. But COVID has accelerated that, and so it's done the same thing with the broadcast landscape. Is that the broadcast landscape all of a sudden is now the streaming platforms are competing with the likes of SuperSport and with the free-to-air channels. The streaming channels that are out there are not just the paid-for streaming channels. There's a lot of piracy streaming channels taking place in that broadcast space, and that's a massive risk to the rights holders. And the big reason why it is a massive risk from a broadcast point of view is that a big portion of the income that rights holders receive in South Africa and pretty much survive on is that money from SuperSport in terms of the broadcast rights fees. And it's not just in South Africa, it's right around the world. It's a big portion of the income of rights holders. And if you start shaking that up and you put a bit of risk in there, the streaming platforms are starting to come in there, the value of those rights and the value of that broadcast starts decreasing. And so it's going to be a fascinating space to see how it plays out. Rights holders have got to, on the one side, look for different revenue streams, and their one always banker was this broadcast rights fee that they could receive. And now with how broadcast is changing from a global point of view, and this acceleration from a streaming side, there's a risk you might not get that PSL grant or that grant money from a rugby point of view or cricket point of view if the rights fees are under pressure.
Ray, we've seen with the finance industry when it has gone through some of its worst times that, it's presented an opportunity to a number of institutions to, find some kind of diamond in the rough. In terms of marketing and sponsorships, is there a diamond in the rough that can be found with COVID-19? I mean, of course, we are again saying that it might take 12 months for sponsorships to recover, and get back to what it used to be post-COVID. But is there any positives we can take out of what is going on right now?
Morena, there's definitely positives. I can't look at our industry and say it's all doom and gloom. What we did, especially at Levergy, is our biggest focus is making sure that we tap into people's passion points. And passion points go across the board, and sports is definitely just one of many, many passion points. So I guess it's a matter of now, how do we look at the situation that we're in, and how do we identify our consumers' passion points? And together with brands is how do we look at leveraging those passion points and getting closer to the consumer in that direction. So yes, predominantly a lot of the time sport was the major driver, but now to that point is that how do we now elevate the sporting culture, and how do we elevate it? Like I keep saying, it's about that additional content. How do we just keep people involved and evolve that conversation a little bit further? Something that I really love, it's in the UK, Ben Foster, goalkeeper for Watford. What he's done is he's created on his social media platform where he's now showing all of his fans behind the scenes of what it takes to be a professional football player and the training that goes behind it. And he's actually got the rights, somehow he managed to swindle the rights from the broadcaster to get a GoPro set up in goals. So he's giving people a different side to the sport that they love already. So now it's really up to us as agencies and getting the trust from the brands and in partnership with the rights holders is how do we create that fresh perspective? How do we just keep things moving to make sure that the industry keeps moving? Because at some point, hopefully, we're all hoping that things go back to normal. But for now, it's just a matter of how do we keep us as consumers and us as fans involved as long as possible.
I have with me Ray, Mike, and John, of course, Inside Sport, continuing with our discussion on sport amid COVID-19, the business of sport amid COVID-19. Do stay with us.